against Canada under the investor state provisions was a suit brought by Ethel Corporation from the US that was wanting to market in Canada a gasoline additive called MMT, which is a suspected neurotoxin.
It was stated by our government that we're going to ban additives to fuel that involve methylmanganese because it's harmful to individuals neurologically and otherwise. It's been linked to attention deficit disorder and other problems. But when we passed those laws, the Ethel Group sued our country, said, how dare you pass laws that restrict our trade, and even when we're doing it for the benefit of our own country.
Well, Canada, the Canadian government responded to that suit by effectively apologizing to Ethel, by paying them $13 million US in compensation, and by withdrawing the ban. So it didn't even have to go through the full adjudication process before Canada backed down.
Our country is being defined and shaped by regulatory bodies, by corporations, who have no accountability whatsoever to the Canadian people. I don't see that this harmonization, unionization is good for the Canadian people, period. Never was, never will be. It needs to stop.
Now, there have been 50 suits approximately under the investor state provisions so far. I say approximately because some of them are still secret. We don't know. There have been 19 against Canada, 17 against Mexico, and 14 against the United States. And of these, Canada has settled out of court or lost 4 cases, Mexico has lost 3 cases, and the United States has not lost any, because adjudicators are very reluctant to use this against U.S.
When Brian Mulroney proposed a free trade agreement, it was a Canadian initiative. It wasn't that popular with public opinion, but it was a major initiative which we initiated, which the U.S. President Ronald Reagan got fully behind. The free trade agreement was, perhaps one of the most dramatic of any period in our history. But there, the public attitudes changed. The public went from negative to positive, and even to this day, depends the questions you ask, but on the whole, attitudes are fairly positive towards free trade.
Free trade is not good for any nation that's involved in free trade. No nation benefits from free trade.
How would you feel about a North American Union, kind of like a European Union between Canada, the U.S., and Mexico?
I think that would
probably not work.
That would not work.
Nah, man. Nah, man.
That wouldn't be a good idea.
I think maybe Canada and the U.S. would be okay together. I don't think Mexico.
They shouldn't do that. Because at that point, Canada is no longer going to be Canada.
Canada has a hard enough time keeping its identity.
I'm a Canadian, so I want to stick with my country.
I just can't see that being favorable for Canadians in any way, shape, or form.
We're still under British control partially,
so we can't really.
So that wouldn't happen. Like, I
wouldn't like it anyways.
I thought they've been trying to do that for years.
Okay, you think it's a good idea? Go ahead.
Absolutely.
The World Trade Organization is the only international organization dealing with the global rules of trade between nations. Its main function is to ensure that trade flows as smoothly, predictably, and freely as possible. The result is a more prosperous, peaceful, and accountable economic world.
What's the WTO all about?
It's all about greed. It's all about, look at these kids up here. They got a sign up that says, don't trade our future. For these young kids in the street today, it's about their future being traded off by corporations who frankly don't give a shit what happens to them. That's what it's about. That's what people are fed up with it. They understand it.
Direct Action brought these people together. Many of them on the street I've talked to have never been in a direct action before. They feel very empowered. They're starting to understand that people can be empowered and take charge of things themselves, and direct action is perfect for getting people in that role to take charge over their own lives.
Together be united. Together united. Together be united.
I go back to the 1988 election, which was fought on the issue of free trade. And the opponents of free trade actually won the majority of the vote. The Mulroney government was elected with a minority of votes. At that time, we had a high level of participation from all sectors of society. Now, it's true that since then the issue has faded from consciousness, but I think there are moments when symbolic issues, for example, Canadian water and sovereignty over our fresh water, there still are elements that would like to get a hold of that and would like to use some of the possible leverage through NAFTA, including the proportional sharing clause, to open up the floodgates. So I think there will be moments when symbolic issues like water will come to the fore, and we will have a resurgence of interest in these issues.
From the U.S. perspective, the largest source of energy imports by far is from Canada and Mexico. Roughly 1/3 of our total energy imports come from our two neighbors.
Proportional sharing clause is very important because it's unique to all international trade agreements that I have ever studied. It effectively makes Canada an energy colony. What the clause says is if Canada were to take measures to conserve some of our non-renewable hydrocarbons, natural gas and petroleum, if we take those measures, we still have to export to the United States the same proportion of our oil or gas exports that were sold over the previous 3 years. What if Canada wanted to preserve 10% of our petroleum production for future generations and for conservation purposes? Well, when you work through the numbers and you find that we're obliged to sell the U.S. 2/3 of the petroleum we produce, the effect of applying the proportional sharing clause could actually mean there would be shortages to meet the needs of Canada.
Canada is a great multicultural, multilateral country. We need Canada's leadership and ingenuity to develop new commissions or organizations whose purpose is to graft a North American vision onto the landscape and push forward for North American policies and institutions as well. So I hope that Canada sees within itself the capacity to have a big effect and to take the lead. And if it took the lead and worked closely with Mexico, my guess is the United States would be very agreeable to that.
They don't really need the money. As you can see, housing is natural materials. The fruits, all of this they have farming, they have hunting, they have everything they need to live and more. But then they get the progress arriving to these towns, power lines, running water, and these are services that you need to pay for. You cannot pay with a bag of corn, you need to pay with cash. So they start needing the money, getting in the capitalism system, and that's when poverty arrives to these towns. You know, they need the money. Okay, I have some money, I buy a radio and a TV, I see what's on TV, it's pure marketing. Things that they didn't need for over 2,000 years, in a decade they start needing.
Pues bueno, el Tratado de Libre Comercio, como tú sabes, no todos estamos realmente informados como se debe. O sea, en lo único que nos afecta es en la desinformación. ¿Me explico? No todos tenemos también la capacidad de admitir el libre comercio.
Y nada nos ha beneficiado el libre comercio. La verdad, estamos igual o peor ahorita con esta crisis que tenemos. Realmente es difícil la situación.
Creo que siento que el producto mexicano va y con un precio bajo y regresa con un precio más caro y se afecta porque pues lo que puede ser México consumir y nosotros consumir nuestro producto tenemos que mandarlo para allá.
Nunca hemos visto nada que nos ayude, que nos apoye, nada. Es nada más para los que tienen dinero, el pobre nunca.
How has the experience in Mexico been in terms of NAFTA since it started 15 years ago?
Ha sido una situación positiva.